The evening sunlight poured through the wide windows, casting a warm golden hue over the living room. Oliver sat on the edge of the couch, his fingers gripping the fraying fabric as he scrolled through his phone, the glow illuminating his face. Outside, the world buzzed with life. Children giggled on the street, birds chirped in the trees, and his wife Mia had said she'd be home soon from her yoga class. But the growing silence in the apartment set his nerves on edge. She was never late without a reason. He glanced at the clock on the wall, its hands ticking rhythmically. 3 hours had passed since she'd left. He had texted her twice, first to check when she would be home, and a second time when he realized she hadn't replied. No responses. Just the glowing, unyielding screen of his phone, mocking him with its silence. This wasn't like her. Mia was always responsive, the perfect blend of excitement and calm. Their relationship seemed solid, built on conversations that spanned hours and midnight kitchen raids filled with laughter. Yet lately a strange tension had curled itself around them, subtle yet undeniable. It started small. A missed call here, a vague answer there, and the long hours she claimed to spend at her newly acquired part-time job. The thought twisted his stomach. He remembered the time she forgot to mention a late meeting. He had been at home, a pizza for one on the coffee table, while she texted him about how overwhelmed she was with work. Later that night, after endless excuses and sporadic updates, she had arrived home with a mismatched scent of sandalwood and something floral he couldn't quite identify. Just a coincidence, Oliver thought, shaking his head as if to dismiss the dread that started invading his peace. He picked up the remote, but the television remained off. A vibration broke the silence. His phone had buzzed. As he swiped to unlock it, hope fluttered in his chest, but was quickly quelled when he saw a name he didn't recognize: Kyra. The message was short, a single, casual line. "Can't wait for tomorrow. Saxo." It felt as if the ground dropped beneath him. Oliver stared at the screen, the words blurring in his vision. It was a casual message, sure, but something about it sent a wave of cold through his veins. He tried to tell himself it was nothing, a simple friendship, but as the hours of silence dragged on, his heart unraveled further. He dialed her number, the ringing echoing in the empty house. No answer. The knot in his stomach tightened into a painful coil. He leaned back, frustration boiling beneath the surface. He felt like a shadow in his own life, lost in thoughts of doubt and confusion. Mia had always been open, the kind of partner who would share everything: her thoughts, her dreams, her fears. Why, then, the sudden secrecy? Suddenly, mundane tasks felt fraught with significance as he thought back over the past week: the odd phone calls, the whispered conversations that fell silent when he entered the room, the way she flinched when he reached for her phone during dinner. With a surge of determination, he rose and made his way to her study, a space that had become her sanctuary, filled with half-written notes and remnants of her creative pursuits. There, amidst the unfamiliar clutter, he sought any clue that might answer his questions. The desk was organized, papers neatly stacked aside, except for one manila envelope partially hidden beneath a pile of notebooks. He snatched it up, his breath hitching as he tore it open. Inside, he found a series of emails, a digital correspondence between Mia and someone named Liam. As he read fragments of their laughter-laced exchanges, pieces of memory crashed into him like tidal waves. Liam, her college sweetheart, the one who had left for another state in pursuit of a dream, had resurfaced. The words burned into him with the clarity of a bitter truth, reminiscences of dates, inside jokes, and confessions that twisted in his gut like a sharp knife. Oliver stumbled backward, his chair scraping across the wooden floor. He felt air rush from his lungs, leaving him vulnerable and exposed to a reality he hadn't been prepared for. The betrayal was tangible, suffocating the love he thought they shared. With each sentence he read, anger kindled alongside despair, illuminating every flickering memory of shared laughter and whispered futures. How could she? How could she pretend to love him, all the while planting seeds of disloyalty in the dark with an X? As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of heartbreak, he made a decision. He would not confront her now. There was no satisfaction in treading down familiar paths filled with untruths. No, he would take this new information and leverage it, not just against her, but against the person who had slithered back into her heart, worming his way between their conversation, their kisses, and all those little moments that defined their marriage. Oliver leaned against the desk, the weight of his anger pushing him deeper into resolve. A storm was brewing inside him, and he was ready to unleash it, first upon Liam, and then upon Mia. They would both feel the consequences of the trust they shattered. He tilted his chin, the corner of his mouth lifting in a semblance of a smile as he plotted his next move. No longer would he be the silent victim. They had awakened something within him. Anger had turned into strategy, and desperation would fuel his retribution. The room was dimly lit, the golden glow of the table lamp doing little to quench the dark emotions swirling within Oliver. He paced, his heart pounding with every step, the manila folder gripping tightly in his hands. He had spent the day stewing in disbelief, the emails echoing in his mind like a siren's call, teasing, taunting. Mia still had not come home, and the waiting was unbearable. Each tick of the clock seemed to mock him, a reminder of time lost to deceit. He thought of confronting her immediately, but the simmering anger demanded more than just words. He wanted to orchestrate the confrontation with every ounce of cold precision. At last the door opened with a creak, and she stepped inside, a wave of cool air trailing behind her. Mia looked radiant yet unsettled, her hair glimmered under the soft light, but there was an undercurrent of tension etched across her features. She froze for a moment, her gaze drifting across the room, landing on him. "Oliver, you're home early," she stammered, hastily setting her purse down. "Where were you?" The words fell from his lips like stones, heavy and unyielding. She opened her mouth as if to respond but seemed to hesitate, her eyes darting towards the desk and back, curiosity shimmering beneath the surface. "I got caught up at work. You know how it is." "Caught up? Or caught out?" he shot back, his voice low but laced with a venom he couldn't hide. The air froze between them as comprehension flickered in her eyes. Oliver took a step forward, the manila envelope clutched tightly in his hand. "Let's get to the point, shall we? I found these." He waved it slightly, the papers visible just enough to pique her interest. Mia's breathing quickened. "What do you mean? What's that?" "Why don't you take a look for yourself?" He tossed it onto the coffee table as if it was a live grenade. "Enjoy reading every intimate word exchanged between you and Liam." Her face drained of color as she leaned against the wall, teetering in shock. "Oliver, I can explain." "Explain," he raged, his voice rising like flames licking at dry wood. "There's nothing to explain. Your emails sing a duet of infidelity while I was left here, blindfolded, playing the fool." But she stammered, the shock giving way to indignation. "You don't understand the whole story." "No? Enlighten me then," he challenged, his tone sharp enough to cut through the air. "What could possibly justify you reaching out to your ex? The man who left you when the going got tough. You made a choice, didn't you? You chose him over us." "Oliver, it wasn't about choosing him. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness," she stuttered, tears threatening to well in her eyes. "You've been busy at work, and I felt alone. Liam, he was there when I needed someone to talk to. I thought it was just old friends catching up." "Old friends," he echoed incredulously. "And what about your best friend inside my house and our bed shared between us? Did you consider how it made me feel, the same way you used to comfort a lover? Don't you dare play victim now." Her composure crumbling, Mia's defenses gave way as she dashed to the table, snatching the envelope. She rifled through the contents but found no solace in the damning words before her. "I didn't mean to fall for him. It just happened. And you've become so distant." "Distant," he laughed bitterly. "You're the one who transported herself into the arms of another man. You spent nights either lying to me or dealing with him. You know, it felt like someone else was in our home." He watched as the facade of strength she had been clinging to crumbled. "What do you want from me?" she finally pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Honestly," he said, leaning in closer, his voice a chilling whisper that ratcheted the tension higher. "I want you to suffer as you made me suffer. I want your precious Liam to realize who you truly are, a woman who cannot be trusted. I will turn him against you. I will make him see the truth." Mia's expression shifted from despair to anger and back to regret. "You're going to ruin me?" she asked quietly, disbelief etched across her face. "Ruin? No," he answered coldly. "I plan to take everything you held dear, starting with the one you've taken for granted. That love you saw in Liam. It's a shadow of what I thought we had. I will make sure he sees you for who you really are." "Don't," she cried out, panic underlying her voice as she took a protective step back. "You can't. Watch me." The finality in his tone signaled the end of their conversation. He turned on his heel, storming toward the door. He paused, glancing back over his shoulder with a tight smile that felt foreign but intoxicating. "Oh, and Mia? Don't bother looking for him. I hear he's in town tonight." With that, he stepped out, leaving the door ajar behind him. The chill of the evening air slapped him in the face as he moved away from the home they once built together, the weight of vengeance heavy on his shoulders. He would find Liam, and as he marched toward their impending confrontation, adrenaline coursed through him, igniting a fierce resolve to unveil the true face of betrayal. This was a war. and he had drawn first blood. Oliver felt a satisfaction building deep inside, a rolling wave of empowerment mixing with the remnants of heartbreak. He would take control. He would leave her desperate, unravaged by the choices she made. Little did they know the storm that was about to engulf them both had only just begun. Oliver sat at the edge of a rooftop terrace, the city skyline sprawling before him like a glittering tapestry of ambition and loss. It was a stark contrast to the turmoil raging in his heart. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the buildings, and he found a twisted sense of solace in its beauty. His plan had come to fruition more quickly than he had anticipated, but the satisfaction he had hoped to feel was muddled with something unexpected, an ache for the love they once shared. After that evening's confrontation, moments played back in his mind like a haunting film reel. Mia's shocked expression as she realized the depths of her actions, the raw panic in her voice when he had threatened to expose her betrayal to Liam. He had executed every part of his revenge with precision, each piece a calculated move in a chess game, where the stakes were high, and although he had emerged victorious, the victory felt hollow. Mia had indeed reached out to Liam, but the phone call had not gone the way she had hoped. Oliver had intercepted the conversation, feeding him twisted narratives of betrayal and unfaithfulness, planting the seeds of doubt that took root in Liam's mind. Distrust blossomed into fury after Oliver shared carefully crafted messages that made it clear Mia had been feigning loyalty both to him and to Liam. That night, as she desperately attempted to explain herself, Liam had turned on her, his words sharp as knives cutting through their connections. The fallout had been immediate and devastating. Friends had turned their backs on Mia, disgusted by the betrayal. Within days, Oliver watched her spiral as she struggled to maintain appearances while everything that once gave her life meaning crumbled around her. The house they had filled with laughter now echoed with emptiness, and what was once vibrant now felt plagued with darkness. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through social media. The notifications were flooded with messages from mutual friends. They had witnessed the public unraveling of Mia's carefully constructed facade. The scandal of her infidelity had cut deep through their social circles, leaving her isolated and vulnerable, the very wreckage of the betrayal she had crafted. Yet, even as he observed the consequences of her actions, Oliver felt no joy or vindication. Instead, it was a reminder of the feelings that had consumed him, the loss of the life he had so earnestly built with her. He had fought for control over his emotions, seeking solace in revenge, but at what cost? Was this victory merely an exercise in bitterness? He sighed and set his phone down. Therapy had helped him navigate this chaotic whirlwind of emotions. Each session peeled back layers of bitterness, anger, and grief, revealing the core of his strength. He was no longer the passive partner, nor would he ever go back to being the man who accepted betrayal quietly. He had transformed his pain into purpose, initiating a journey that began with him reclaiming his love for writing, an outlet that fueled his creativity and self-reflection. He stood up and leaned on the railing, feeling the cool breeze brush against him. The city felt alive, promising growth and new beginnings. The tightness in his chest, once so suffocating, had begun to release its grip as he focused on the horizon ahead. He would become someone who thrived rather than one left to wallow in despair. 2 weeks later, as the full moon illuminated the night, he unexpectedly ran into Mia downtown at a mutual friends event. She looked different, stripped of her usual self-assuredness, her confidence replaced with a deep vulnerability that made her appear older. As they locked eyes, a familiar wave of sorrow washed over him, igniting fragments of what they had once been. Mia approached hesitantly, her voice barely a whisper against the sounds of clinking glasses and laughter swirling around them. "Oliver," she started, and he caught the tremble in her tone. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." He met her gaze, and it was as if their past hung between them like a fragile thread. "Sorry doesn't change what you did, Mia," he replied, his voice even, devoid of the anger that once fueled him. "You shattered trust and chased a fantasy. You shouldn't be surprised by the consequences." "I understand that now," she admitted, shame coloring her features. "I keep replaying my choices, and I hate what I did. I was foolish, and I took everything for granted. The way it ended with Liam, it hurt. I've lost everyone I cared about, and I hated myself for what I did to you." She paused, tears glistening in her eyes as she continued. "I realized I wanted something that wasn't real, and I lost myself." It was a raw admission, but Oliver felt no pressing need to console her. He merely studied her expression as the weight of their shared history hung between them. He had wanted revenge, he had craved the moment where she would understand the depth of her betrayal. But now, witnessing her vulnerability, a part of him softened. "I've rebuilt myself," he said, finally, his tone resolute. "And I refuse to let your choices define my happiness. I deserve better, And so do you. He felt the air shift, the tension dissipating. This chapter is over for us, Mia. You have your demons to face, and so do I. As she nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks, he felt paradoxically relieved. Closure was not about punishing another but understanding that both deserved a path forward without each other. The moon cast a soft light on their lingering silhouettes as he turned to leave. But before he disappeared into the crowd, Oliver stole one last look at Mia. I hope you find your way back to who you once were, he said softly. You're stronger than you think. And with that, he walked into the luminous expanse of the night, a sense of empowerment racing through him. For the first time in weeks, he felt free from the shadows of betrayal and the weight of revenge. The horizon ahead shimmered with hope, promising new opportunities and beginnings. Never again would he walk alongside the ghosts of his past. He was ready to embrace the future, one where he could mold his happiness, unshackled from the pain of betrayal.